This is the outside of the House of Representatives. As I mentioned before, we have two legislative branches. We have the executive with the governor, and then we have the two legislative branches, the Senate and the House of Representatives, of which I'm one of the 160 in there. Just a funny story, when you're first elected, oftentimes the pages will come in, they'll hand you a note that someone's waiting to see you out here, because oftentimes we're in session for hours at a time. People will come to visit us, or there'll be someone who will need to talk to us about various legislation. And what they'll do is, when you're a rookie legislator or a first termer, occasionally someone will hand you a note that says, Mr. Roger Walcott is here to see you. So you'll come out, and oftentimes it's very busy out here, and you'll yell out, Roger Walcott. Roger Walcott, this is State Representative Lew Evangelidis. Never did happen to me, but that's what they do. And you'll realize after a while when you come here that Roger Walcott is the statue that sits outside the House chambers. And it's kind of a way to teach you a little bit of the history and a little fun lesson at the State House. So there's Roger Walcott, and if you're ever elected to the legislature and they tell you Roger Walcott's out here to see you, don't fall for it. We are now about to enter my favorite room in the State House. This is the House of Representatives chambers, and I really believe it's the most beautiful room in Massachusetts, and we'll get a chance to see it, and I'll show you where I sit and how we conduct our business in there, and this is real exciting for me now to get into this chamber again. So this is, as you can see, is the House chambers. This is where the House of Representatives conducts its business. We have 160 members, and we all have a seat assigned to us. This is the podium that the Speaker is at. Many of you have seen this on TV as well, or if you've ever come to the State House, I'm sure you've seen this as part of your tour. But this is where Speaker Sal DeMacy will preside over the House. He stands up at the podium. He gets, or the Speaker who is standing in for him on that day will be up here. He will recognize the members as they speak. I'll show you how it's done. But the essence of it is that you're up here. You have this microphone. It has a mute button on it in case you're having a conversation that does not wish to be recorded. But there are cameras, and we all get a chance to give our speeches, and this is where the Speaker conducts the House of Representatives. One thing I did want to point out was on those boards up there, they actually have the names of all the representatives. And what is rather fascinating is, I'd ask you to look at that board first, and then over to this board over here. And you can see on this board that when you first walk in, you think the names are duplicated. There's the same names on both sides. Unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, it's not the case at all. All the names on that side, and all the names in this column, and this column, and this column until you get to the name Jones are the Democrats. And these small number of folks are the only Republicans in the House of Representatives. Up on that board right now, I believe there are 19 of us listed. As you can see, Evangelidis right there, squeezing its way in. I did want to point out a couple other things. If you've done the chambers, a view of the chambers, as I said, there's 160 seats, and we are assigned here. Traditionally, it had been set up that this side would be the party in power, and there's the Sacred Card of Massachusetts up in the back, which is kind of in the dark right now. It has been removed from the chambers and disappeared as a prank. I believe it was at the Harvard, they had a fraternity prank, and they stole the sacred card, but it has come back, and it's pretty well secured now. But it is supposed to be facing the party in power, and I guess you could make a statement that it's probably pretty well secure right there and pointing to this direction, because the Democrats have had the House of Representatives since, I believe, 1948. Surprisingly, Massachusetts was a Republican state for the 100 years since the Civil War until about 1948, but Tip O'Neill has been outlined in his books, actually attacked the legislature and decided he wanted to figure out how to make it a Democratic legislature, and he worked very hard to take over the House, and it's never gone back to the Republicans. But nonetheless, it is facing this direction because the Democratic Party is in power, but all those seats are Democrats, as well as the first chamber that they call it. And then all the Republicans are seated in here. And just so you know, I'm in seat 100. It is this row right here, and it's this seat. And this is where I conduct my business for the people of the 1st Worcester District in Massachusetts that I so happily represent. We have buttons on here where we get a chance to vote. And when you vote on a particular bill that comes before us, you only have 3 options, and they are predominantly yes for the green button, no for the red button, of which I probably hit more than the green button, and a reset button. There's also a page button. But there's also you also could have the ability to pass, which you wouldn't vote, but you'd explain that you did take a pass on it. I've never hit that button, and I don't imagine why anybody would. I think you have an obligation, and I'm proud to say that this term, as well as almost every term I've served, I have a 100% voting record, and I do believe that you have one job to do for the people that you represent. They may not agree with your votes, but your number one job is to come here, be here, and vote. And some of those votes are tough, but you got to take them. So this is how we do it. We press a button, it shows up on the board, and then the speaker will ask if all those voted who wish to do so and close it, and the results will come up, and if it passes, it can become legislation or law or spending, depending on what we're doing. But I want to say one thing that's a little bit funny about here. When you're in the chamber and you wish to be recognized from the speaker, it's not exactly a place for the timid. You don't raise your hand. You don't say, Mr. Speaker, or I'd like to talk, or tell somebody. You've got to actually scream out loud to be heard. And it actually requires you to stand up in your seat and yell out, Mr. Speaker! And if you don't yell that loud, you won't get recognized. And frankly, if you yell that loud, sometimes you won't get recognized because everybody else is yelling too. And it depends on how hard the debate is, how difficult the issue is, how many people want to speak on it. But that's how it works around here, and it takes a little while to get used to that, but you really have to yell out that loud, and you're recognized, and the speaker would say, the representative from Holden, and I would be recognized, and I would have a chance to come down, and I would walk down through the well, and the members would be here, and that's when I would take the podium here, and you address the members. And the one thing you always say when you're addressing the members of the House is, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the members. It's just a way that we speak to each other. And I want to mention an important part of how we speak also. As I mentioned, I'm always referred to as the gentleman from Holden, or if it was a gentle lady from a town. We're not called by name, and we don't refer to each other by names, because the best part of it is we all represent the 40,000 people to the best of our ability, and we don't represent ourselves and our name. We represent our districts. So it's really nice in that way that we do not refer to each other by Mr. or Mrs. or first names. It's always, I disagree with the gentleman from Holliston, or I agree with the gentle lady from Milford. Whatever your colleague has said, that's how we refer to one another. And it's really unacceptable to do anything otherwise. And I think that's a great way to be, because it shows equal respect for each member in here. So that's how it's done. That's how we're recognized. And this is really where we conduct a big, big part of our business here on Beacon Hill.